Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aina Batrisyia binti Fazuly from LD 243 for AI. And today I will be talking about the Fitt's law. So let's get right into it. First of all, let's talk about how the Fitt's law started. It started in 1954 when psychologist Paul Fitt studied the human motor system and concluded that the time required to move to a target depends on the target's size and their distance. So you might be wondering right now, what is the Fitt's law? Well, it's not that much of a law, but more of a method that can be useful to a UX designer when they're designing a website or designing anything. Fitt's law means the time required to reach a target relative to its size and distance. In other words, you can say that the bigger the size of the target and the closer it is to you, it is easier to hit. Look at this example for a second. Which one of the target will the cursor hit first? If you're on your laptop, you can try this out yourself. As you can see, it is much faster and easier to hit the second target because it's closer and bigger. The Fitt's law is all around us, and not just on websites. They're everywhere. You just have to look for it. So take a look at the keyboard if you're using your laptop. Take a look at your keyboard and see what are the biggest buttons on there. We have the space bar, we have the enter key, we have shift button, we have the backspace. They're all made bigger and closer to you. Well, not all of them, but they're all made bigger because we use them all the time. And look at your keyboard again and tell me which keys are the smallest. Just look at the top row. We have the F1 to F12 buttons. We have the print screen insert. We don't use that as much. That's why it's tinier and further away from you, because you don't use it as much as you use the other buttons. Okay, so moving on. Now let's talk about prime pixel. The prime pixel is a method almost like a measurement that one can use as a guide to tell which area the user uses the most. From that, we can apply the Fitt's law and predict where else on the screen will the user move. Okay, so from this picture here, the prime pixel is at the center of the cross or the T. From this point right here, we can design the shortest paths that the user can take from there. It is mostly used for desktop and game interfaces and not so much for websites, because they can't do that because it can cause confusion to the users for technical reasons. But there is a way to use this in websites. We have the likely prime pixel. Because we can't determine the prime pixel, we can identify the likely prime pixel by the actions of the user. So looking at this example, the blue rectangle is where the prime pixel is. And Twitter did this by putting the login button right under the name fill-in. And not just the login button. Notice how all the buttons, the important ones, under this we have the remember me and forgot password buttons. They're all in close proximity, so it is easier for the user to log in. And in case they forgot their passwords, they can just click on the hyperlink and then make a new password and log in. Now, assuming that you got the gist of it by now, so let's talk about it in a little bit more detail. In addition to that, there are also something called the magic pixels. Magic pixels are the boundaries that do not exist in the real world. No one can physically go there. It is beyond the screen. And based on the prime example, prime pixel, the magic pixels are the furthest points from the prime pixel. At least most of them are at any given moment in time. Thus, they are the least important state on the screen, according to Fitt's law. So in this image right here, this is the magic pixels. They are the four corners of the screen. As you can see, you can't go there. You can't reach there because it's beyond there. Okay, so how does it work? There is a mathematical formula to calculate the Fitt's law, but we're not going to get into that as much. Now, remember when I said about the target being bigger is easier to hit? That's still true. However, it doesn't work like that in every case. That works only if you increase the size of a small object by 20%. But if you were to increase the size of an already big object, it would just make it look awkward. For example, here, imagine the login button is this big. I mean, you can still use the login button, but it's just not pretty to look at, and you don't want an ugly website. So, how do we use the Fitt's law? Okay, so there's three main ways to use it, and I will also state the pros and cons of these methods. First of all, is by, you guessed it, expanding the target object. The pros of doing this is that it will increase the interaction and ease the user experience. The downside of this is that it can take up space and the screen creates an imbalance to the design, which nobody wants. Secondly, by minimizing movements. The lesser the cursor moves, the better. And this has actually been done. Let me ask you a question. What is currently the closest pixel to your cursor right now? Okay, the answer is where you are right now. You don't have to move your cursor to access a command, and that is the right-click feature. You click on the right-click on your mouse or your cursor, and there you go. A menu will pop up, and they can provide you a few commands that you can do, like copy and paste, refresh. You know how this works. So you can do anything with the right-click feature. Or maybe not anything, but it's very useful. Okay, so the cons to this is that it can create conflict to designing principles when you're trying to group or separate buttons. But the overall function is to consistently increase the discoverability of the interface. And lastly is to avoid muscular tension. This is done by only a few clicks to access something. For example, the Face ID that the iPhones do. You don't even have to click anything. You just have to hold your phone and hold your face up, and it lets you in. But we're not making phones now, we're making websites. The point is, when you're making a design, you have to make sure that the command that you're trying to make, the normal ones, the one that you use all the time, never exceed 3 clicks, or the user will be demotivated to use the interface. However, again, it doesn't work like that in every case. Sometimes a command needs to be complicated to avoid accidents like accidentally calling someone you don't know with your butt because your phone is in your pocket. Complicated commands also make users realize the severity of the command itself. For example, in the picture right here, the emergency SOS slider here, in order to reach this command, you have to press and hold the side button and one of the volume buttons for a certain amount of time until the emergency SOS appears, like in the picture. So imagine if every command was easy. Everyone would be calling the police at least 10 times a day. And sometimes muscular attention is needed to save your life. In conclusion, the Fitt's law is incredibly important and helpful when it comes to designing a website. It considers many aspects of design that many people overlook. That's all for me. Thank you for listening.